Why does every scent wick you hang at chest height stop working by the time deer actually move? Because you are putting scent in the dead zone. A cotton ball or felt strip hanging 4 feet off the ground sits below the thermal line on most evenings, which means the scent drops straight to the dirt instead of riding the air column out to where the deer are staging. I wasted probably 6 or 7 seasons hanging scent at chest height and wondering why bucks walked past 80 yards away without a flicker. A buddy finally pointed out what I was doing wrong. He said, "You are putting perfume on the floor of a room and expecting somebody in the hallway to smell it. You need to put it on the ceiling fan." That conversation led me to build something I started calling the Tesla antenna, which is a stupid name, but it stuck at deer camp, so I am going with it. It is a 3-foot section of 1/2-inch copper pipe, the kind you buy for about $7 at any hardware store, mounted vertically on a T-post or tree limb roughly 10 to 12 feet off the ground, with scent oil applied directly to the copper. The copper absorbs solar heat during the day. By late afternoon, when deer start moving, the pipe is warm to the touch even when the air temperature has dropped. That warmth does 2 things. First, it heats the scent oil and increases the rate at which the volatile compounds evaporate off the surface. Second, the warm pipe creates a microthermal, a tiny column of rising air around itself, that carries those volatiles upward into the prevailing air current instead of letting them sink to the ground. The result is a scent plume that reaches further, lasts longer, and disperses at deer nose height across a wider area than any ground-level wick have ever used. I know that sounds like a lot of hype for a plumbing pipe on a stick. I thought so too. My lease partner called it the dumbest thing he had ever seen me put in the woods, and I have put some questionable things in the woods over 25 years. He changed his mind 3 weeks later when his cameras showed bucks investigating the copper side of a trail crossing and ignoring the standard wick on the other side. He built fur of his own before October was over. If you have built something similar, I want to hear how it worked. Stay until the end because there is a specific oil mixture and application method that keeps the copper producing scent for roughly 3 days per application instead of the usual 4 to 6 hours you get from a cotton wick. The surface understanding of scent dispersal is simple. You put scent in the woods and deer smell it. But the physics of how scent actually travels through air is the part most hunters never think about. And it is the reason most scent setups underperform. A volatile compound, which is the chemical term for any molecule light enough to become airborne, evaporates faster when it is warmer. That is basic chemistry you can test in your kitchen. Put a drop of vanilla extract on a cold plate and a drop on a warm plate. The warm plate fills the room faster. The rate of evaporation roughly doubles for every 18 degrees Fahrenheit of temperature increase. A scent wick sitting in 45-degree evening air releases compounds slowly and in a tight, low plume that hugs the ground. The same compound on a surface that is 20 to 30 degrees warmer than ambient air releases roughly twice as fast, and the warmed molecules rise instead of falling because warm air is lighter than cool air. Copper is the key material because of thermal conductivity, which is how efficiently a material absorbs and transfers heat. Copper conducts heat roughly 30 times better than stainless steel, and about 2 times better than aluminum. A copper pipe sitting in afternoon sun for 3 to 4 hours will be noticeably warm to the touch, even after the sun drops below tree line because the metal stores that energy and releases it slowly. I tested this with a cheap infrared thermometer from the hardware store, about $25, on a late October afternoon in S.E., Minnesota, that Mississippi River bluff country east of Winona where the hardwood ridges drop into deep coulees and the thermals run like clockwork every evening. The ambient air at 5 p.m. was 48 degrees. The copper pipe mounted on a T-post in partial sun read 71 degrees. That is a 23-degree difference. A steel post next to it read 53. An aluminum pole read 61. The copper held more heat longer than either alternative, and the price difference was negligible. $7 for 3 feet of copper versus $4 for steel conduit. I should be upfront about what I do not know. I cannot tell you the exact distance the scent plume travels from the copper versus from a ground wick. I do not have the equipment to measure airborne volatile concentrations at distance. What I can tell you is the deer behavior I observed. On the ground wick, deer that were already on the trail would stop and investigate when they walked within roughly 15 to 20 yards of the source, about the distance across a 2-car garage. On the copper pipe, I had deer adjust their travel line from what looked like 40 to 50 yards out, roughly the distance from home plate to second base, pulling toward the pipe before they were directly downwind of it. That wider detection radius is what convinced me the dispersal pattern is actually different, not just the same scent hung higher. Quick pause here. Everything I just walked through, and 100 more tricks like it, is sitting inside the Buck Hunter's Bible, 2026 edition. 280 pages of the stuff that actually puts deer on the ground. And right now, if you grab it, I am throwing in the 30-day opening day roadmap completely free. That is a 60-page day-by-day preseason plan that walks you from the first scout to opening morning, so you start this season ahead of every other hunter in the woods. Link in the description, QR code on screen. This is the season you stop guessing. The build takes about 20 minutes and costs under $15 total. Buy a 3-foot section of 1/2-inch Type M copper pipe from the plumbing aisle. Type M is the thinnest wall, which is fine because you are not running water through it. You are using it as a heat sink. Flatten one end with a hammer or a vise so you can wire it to a tree or slide it over a T-post cap. If you are mounting it on a tree, use a single ratchet strap around the trunk, about $3, and wire the pipe vertically to the strap with 2 zip ties. If you are using a T-post, drive the post where you want it and slide the flattened end of the pipe over the top. Either way, the pipe should sit 10 to 12 feet off the ground, roughly the height of a basketball rim. That height puts the scent above the evening thermal inversion layer, which is the boundary where cooling ground air meets the warmer air above it. Below the inversion, scent falls. Above it, scent rides. A scent source below 6 feet is in the fall zone on most calm evenings. A scent source at 10 to 12 feet is in the ride zone. The application matters as much as the height. Do not use water-based scent products on copper. Water beads off the metal surface and drips away in minutes. Use oil-based scent. I have tested 3 products head-to-head on copper pipes over 2 seasons. Conquest Scent's Evercalm stick at $15 or melts directly onto warm copper and lasts roughly 2 days per application. That is my go-to for early season when you want a calm, non-threatening scent in the area. Dead Downwind Whitetail Intrigue at $12 for the oil-based formula works well during pre-rut because the doe and heat compounds disperse further from the warm surface. Smoky's Deer Lure Buck and Rut at $18 is the thickest formula I have tested, and it lasts the longest on copper, roughly 3 days before it needs refreshing, but the heavy consistency means it does not volatilize as quickly in cool temperatures below 40 degrees. I lean toward the Conquest Evercalm for most situations because the sustained release profile on warm copper is the best balance of dispersal rate and duration. But I want to be straight about something. I am not a chemist, and I do not know the exact mechanism of why copper outperforms other surfaces for scent dispersal beyond the thermal conductivity explanation. My buddy who runs a machine shop said copper might also be catalyzing oxidation of the organic compounds in the scent, which would release additional volatile byproducts that increase the total scent output. That sounds plausible to me, but I cannot confirm it. What I can confirm is the camera data. On my SE Minnesota property, I ran 2 identical setups, one with a copper pipe at 10 feet with Evercalm, and one with a standard felt scent wick at 4 feet with the same Evercalm product, positioned 150 yards apart on the same travel corridor. Both had a StealthCam DS4K at $80 pointed at the scent source. Over 3 weeks in early October, the copper setup had 23 deer investigations, meaning a deer stopped within 10 yards and oriented toward the pipe. The felt wick had 11, roughly double. Same product, same property, same 3-week window. The variable was height and heat. I want to be honest about the limitations of my test. 2 setups, 1 property, 3 weeks. That is not science. Wind direction varied between the 2 locations even though they were only 150 yards apart because terrain features on that bluff property create micro wind patterns that shift throughout the evening. The copper pipe might have had better wind positioning on more nights than the felt wick. I cannot rule that out. What I can say is that I repeated the comparison the following season in NW, Wisconsin. That rolling coulee dairy country west of Eau Claire, where the ridges are gentler, and the wind is more consistent across a field edge. And the numbers were similar. 19 investigations on the copper versus 10 on the felt wick over the same 3-week October window. Different property, different terrain, same direction of result. 2 tests on 2 properties showing roughly double the investigations is enough to convince me, but I am not going to pretend it is proof. Run your own comparison. 2 cameras, same scent, copper versus cotton, 3 weeks. Let the data tell you. Look, I am going to be straight with you. Everything I am walking through in this video is just a small piece of what is inside the Buck Hunter's Bible, 2026 edition, 280 pages, 101 field-tested tricks, and right now, You also get the 30-day opening day roadmap free with it, a 60-page day-by-day plan that gets you ready before the season even starts. I do not know how long that bonus stays in the deal, but if you have been watching these videos and thinking this could be my season, that is the move. Link in the description below, QR code on screen, make this the year. A buddy who hunts agricultural flats in northern Ohio. That wide-open soybean and corn country south of Sandusky, where the woodlots are small, and every deer movement between bedding and food crosses 200 yards of open ground, built 3 copper antennas along a fence row between a bedding thicket and a cut bean field. He said the first week he noticed deer pulling toward the fence row from further out than he was used to seeing. Normally they crossed wherever was closest. With the copper pipes dispersing scent along the fence row, they adjusted their crossing point toward the scent source. He had his PSE knock on at $1. 100 and his Muddy Rebel hang on at $180 positioned 20 yards from the middle pipe. He took a 3.5-year-old 8-point on the third sit of the season at that setup, the earliest he had killed a mature buck on that property in 6 years of hunting it. The deer scored 138 inches, which is a wall hanger in Ohio agricultural country, where the bucks have genetics, but the pressure is intense. His theory is that the copper antenna pulled scent across the open ground between the bedding thicket and the fence-a-row, giving deer a reason to commit to the fence-a-row crossing during daylight, instead of waiting for full dark, when the evening thermal would carry any ground-level scent away from the crossing. I am not sure his theory is exactly right, but the behavior change he described matches the physics. A scent source at 10 feet, riding a rising thermal, produces a wider and more consistent plume than a scent source at 4 feet that gets trapped under the evening inversion. The deer do not need to smell it from a mile away. They just need to detect it from 50 yards instead of 15, and that extra 35 yards of detection radius is what pulls them off a nighttime crossing and onto a daylight approach. His data, not mine. And one property is not proof. But the behavioral shift he described, deer adjusting their crossing point toward a scent source they could detect from further away than a ground-level wick, matches what I saw on the Minnesota cameras. Where this does not work is in heavy rain or on overcast days with no sun. The entire mechanism depends on solar heating of the copper. On a cloudy day, the pipe stays at ambient temperature and you lose the thermal advantage. It becomes just a scent wick on a tall pole, which is still better than chest height but not dramatically better. Rain washes oil-based scents off the copper within an hour. Even the thick formulas. I lost 2 applications to unexpected rain in November before I started checking the forecast before applying. If rain is in the forecast, within 12 hours, do not apply. Wait for the next dry window. The application lasts long enough that a single clear afternoon of sun, followed by a calm evening, is all you need for one sit. The other limitation is extreme cold, below about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The copper does not retain enough solar heat to create a meaningful temperature differential over the surrounding air. The scent still disperses, but at roughly the same rate as a standard wick. Save this setup for the early season through mid-November window, when daytime temperatures regularly push into the 40s and 50s and afternoon sun is strong enough to charge the pipe. In December and January, switch to a standard scent drag or mock scrape setup that does not depend on solar heating. I should also mention that copper develops a green patina over time, which is copper oxide reacting with moisture in the air. That patina does not affect the heat absorption or the scent performance. If anything, the slightly rougher oxidized surface holds oiled scent slightly better than shiny new copper, because the texture creates more surface area for the scent to grip. Do not clean or polish the pipe after the first season. Let it weather. My oldest pipe has been in the field for 4 seasons, and it performs better now than it did new. The total investment across 3 properties is 5 copper pipes at $7 each, 5x ratchet straps at $3 each, and a bag of zip ties. $50 for the whole system. Compare that to the commercial scent dispersal products on the market. A Conquest Scents VS1 electronic scent vaporizer runs $100 and requires batteries. A Downwind scent blaster is about $40 per refill unit. Over seasons, the commercial scent dispersal route costs roughly $300 to $500, depending on how often you hunt. Copper pipe route costs $50 once and lasts indefinitely. My wife found 3 copper pipes in the garage and asked if I was starting a plumbing business. I told her each pipe was worth about 20 deer investigations per season. She asked how many of those turned into venison in the freezer. 3 so far. She said the plumbing business might pay better. She might be right about the hourly rate, but the per deer cost is hard to beat. And unlike the electronic vaporizers that eat batteries and break in cold weather, copper does not have moving parts, does not need batteries, and does not care if it rains on Monday as long as the sun comes back on Tuesday. The bonus I promised is the 3-day application method. Warm the copper pipe with a heat gun or a lighter for about 30 seconds before applying the scent. Not hot enough to burn you, just warm to the touch, roughly 100 to 110 degrees. Apply the scent while the pipe is warm so it melts into the surface texture instead of sitting on top. Then wrap the application area, roughly 6 inches in the middle of the pipe, about the length of a dollar bill, with a single layer of gauze bandage, the kind from a first aid kit, about $2 for a roll. The gauze is as a reservoir, holding scent against the copper so it wicks out gradually instead of evaporating all at once. On my test pipes, the gauze wrap method extended the detectable scent life from roughly 16 to 20 hours without gauze to roughly 60 to 72 hours with gauze. 3 days from a single application. A roll of gauze covers about 15 applications. Total cost per application is roughly 50 cents worth of gauze and a few cents worth of scent. If you have tried heating scent wicks or building raised dispersal rigs, leave your results below. A $7 copper pipe, a ratchet strap, and 50 cents worth of gauze. That is the entire rig. I want to walk through the positioning because this is where most guys who try the copper setup get mediocre results. You do not put the pipe directly over your stand. A deer that investigates a scent source at 10 feet is going to look up. You do not want him looking up at your tree. Place the pipe 15 to 25 yards from your stand, roughly the distance from a pitcher's mound to home plate. Position so the prevailing wind carries the scent from the pipe toward the travel corridor you expect deer to use. Your stand sits downwind and to the side of the pipe, so the deer approaches the scent source and gives you a broadside or quartering away shot angle on the approach. I got this wrong my first season. I put the pipe 5 yards from my tree and a doe walked right under it, looked straight up, saw me, and blew out of there hard enough to clear the area for the rest of the evening. The pipe is a decoy for their nose, not a marker for your location. Treat the positioning the same way you would position a decoy. Close enough to draw them in, far enough from your tree that they focus on it instead of you. The guys at deer camp laughed when I mounted the first one. They called it my weather antenna. They stopped laughing when the cameras showed twice the deer activity on the copper side. The pipe does not make magic, it makes physics. Warm surface, rising air, scent rides further. The deer do not care what it looks like. They care what it smells like, and they can smell it from twice as far. Build one this weekend. Put a camera on it. Give it 3 weeks. And when your buddy asks what that pipe is doing on a stick in the middle of the woods, tell him it is a weather antenna. He does not need to know what it actually does. Not yet.